Hi, my name is John Smith with ExtraHop Networks. Today I want to talk about a little ExtraHop integration I put together over the weekend where I basically use the RevealX Discover platform to take DNS lookups that have either COVID or Corona in them, and I check the IPs that are returned against the Open Threat Exchange API. So if you look here, you'll see from the COVID Cyber Threat Coalition, and I want to call out Zen Data GE. I don't know their real name, but they've done a pretty good job of keeping a list of malicious COVID and coronavirus domains. So if you look here at this particular set of indicators, 30,000 of them are domains and almost 3,100 of them are host names. Point being, around 33,000 DNS names are malicious or have IOCs associated with them around malicious behavior. That's a staggering number. In fact, there's a really interesting post from, let me call his name out. He was really poignant. Someone from Risk IQ named Brandon Dixon. And what he basically said was, hey, maybe we need to start whitelisting COVID and Corona names because there's just so many bad ones. That gave me the idea to check and just see, hey, just how many bad ones are there? And I found some pretty staggering results here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these DNS queries that we run. And the reason I'm using DNS is that it encompasses any protocol, right? Because in this case, the malware or the trick that they're trying to play on you involves a name. So I'm going to try to leverage DNS since it uses a name. And I'm going to basically take the IP addresses that are returned from a DNS query and check them against the Open Threat Exchange API. Real quick, I want to thank AT&T Cybersecurity Services for making AlienVault available. I've had an API key for years. So here you can see you've got an API key. Once you sign up and basically you can see here, this is the format you use. What we'll do on the ExtraHop platform is we will remove all of the quotes and we'll come over here to our Open Data Stream client. And this is what I'm going to use to call out. So when I observe a DNS query with COVID or Corona in it, I'm going to call out an Open Data Stream, which is an API call to get access to find out, hey, does this IP address have any sort of dossier from your platform? So here you'll set it up. And if you look here in the additional HTTP header, this is where you'll put your API key. You can also call it out in the trigger. I prefer to put it in there. That way it's not visible in the trigger. And just a quick walkthrough of what this looks like. So here, you can also, if DNS is too noisy, you can use specific protocols. It's just that DNS encompasses so many protocols that I prefer to use it in this case. Also, we're filtering for COVID and Corona, so it should be relatively easy both on you and on Open Threat Exchange's API. So here, if you look, I'm doing a regular expression match, case insensitive. I see a lot of solutions sort of capitalize something in the middle of a word to try to evade, some application firewalls and IDSs and IPSs. We're using JavaScript. That gives us the full complement of regex. You're not going to be able to hide from regex, so we're doing a case insensitive match on COVID and Corona. And then we're looking at the DNS addresses that are actually returned, and we're checking them against AlienVault's Open Threat Exchange API. So let's just take a look and see what that looks like, right? So again, we're doing a lookup. We're checking the IP addresses for any DNS query that has COVID or Corona in it. So let's just do a quick NS lookup. And this literally got ridiculous yesterday. I looked up, I think, Corona Relief, coronamask.com, COVID mask. It was literally like 7 out of 10 had some sort of OTX dossier associated with them. So let's take a look at COVID19.com, right? That should definitely be legit. So, and let's look up COVID19.com. And this is going to return 3 IP addresses. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to take the 3 IP addresses that were returned. And keep in mind, in the debug window, it's not going to be exactly in chronological order, so I'm going to jump around a little bit once the results come in. But basically, we're going to do we're going to check each and every one of these IP addresses that were returned, and we're going to ask AlienVault, hey, do you have any matches for these? So let's look at the three matches for COVID-19. The first one here, we have COVID-19.com on the 34.202 first two octets. We don't have any antivirus matches, right? So you see AVG has none, Avast has none, ClamAV and MS Defender doesn't. But the count is 5, right? So that means that this particular IP address has had 5 instances where there was some sort of IOC associated with OTX. Now the second one, on the other hand, definitely has 4 IOCs associated with it. But if you look here, you'll see that it has actually had a Win32 CryptRx-Gen Trojan that's been associated. Also, if we scroll to the right just a little bit, you'll see also some Predator malware and another Trojan associated with it from MS Defender. So again, this one, whoops, sorry, here we'll go back. So this particular, the COVID-19.com has definitely got some malware associated with it. And then you see the final one, 52.0.7.30. It actually has a similar Trojan associated with it as well. So I'm inclined to believe that all 3 of these IP addresses have something lying in wait, whether it's, and I don't care what the protocol is, whether it's HTTP, SSL, SMTP, FTP. The point is that the IP address that's associated with this name has some nefarious history associated with it. Some of it may be in the past, some of it rather acute and immediate. So that's very important. And again, keep in mind, it's this egregious using the free, the open source version of Open Threat Exchange. You may use something like Recorded Future, CrowdStrike, something like that. That will also, we can also, anything that can work with either Taxi and Stix files, or if it supports a REST API, we can integrate with it. So let's look at coronavirus. For sure, that's got to be a legitimate one, right? So I'm going to do an NS lookup, coronavirus.com, right? So let's just see what this says. So we see 3 IPs again. I've become somewhat of a first octet bigot, if you will, right? When I see 185, I start to get suspicious. If I see 5 dot, I get suspicious. 162 is another one that I occasionally see being malicious. 23, a lot of those are Akamai, but Akamai can't police every single piece of content. So sometimes those are, and I'm not saying this is Akamai, but you sort of, when you look at threat intelligence long enough, you kind of get an idea that some first octets become pretty consistent with threat intelligence matches. So this should come back here in a minute. Oh, actually it's back now. So now let's take a look. This 162, 242, 150, 89 has 25 instances of having had malicious data. And if we look here, we do see that it's had another Windows Trojan dropper right there, right? So also scrolling down, we see QuakeBot. We see another Win32 malware gen. Sorry for the mouse moving. I just want to point them out for you. I know that can be annoying in a video, but here you'll see some. Then if we scroll to the right, there you'll see a few Razy ransomware, Tesla Crypt. So a couple things I look for when I'm matching up with OTX. Even if all of the antivirus scanners come up null, keep in mind the count, right? We've seen instances where something has, an IOC count of like 2,500 IOCs have been associated with a particular IP address. There are certain CIDR blocks that make up the internet's red light district, and they certainly show themselves when you're matching them up with threat intelligence. So here again, what we're doing, we don't want to, obviously you can't hammer your OTX API with API calls, but when you filter it with things like, I want to see the DNS IP matches for Corona and COVID, that's a manageable amount, and your cyber threat intelligence is only as good as the metrics that you can match it up with, whether that's SIM, syslogs, whether that's firewall logs. But there's no substitute for taking data directly off the wire. If you notice here, there's a 30-second wait here while the UI refreshes. But in this case, like if we integrated this with some of our CrowdStrike integration where we can contain put a host in containment if we observe something. That happens in milliseconds. So let's take an instance of this QuakeBot. If someone did a DNS lookup, and one of the benefits of catching something at DNS is that you can literally respond before the transaction can be complete. So we have a DNS IP returned that is malicious. You can actually issue the CrowdStrike API to quarantine or put the box in containment before they can even download the payload. My point being is the 30 seconds you wait for the UI, what happens under the hood in terms of an API call, that happens within milliseconds. So literally you would be able to quarantine these devices before they even got the payload downloaded. Again, this is John Smith with ExtraHop Networks, and this is an example of leveraging the RevealX surveillance platform with any REST-capable threat intelligence, cyber threat intelligence feed. Thanks so much for listening.